By now, Yooka Laylee is undoubtedly nearly complete, with all of the plans in place and only the building and polishing left. Regardless, there are still things I'm hoping to see Playtonic implement, and when it comes time for Yooka Laylee, I think any of these that don't happen would be great additions. Hear me out, I don't like how Nuts and Bolts turned out either. But I don't think the introduction of a car was the problem. I think the execution was the primary problem. Nuts and Bolts followed in the footsteps of Star Fox Adventures by almost completely disregarding what the series was known for and didn't play the game off as a spin-off. The games aren't necessarily bad in an objective stance, but they are bad in their franchise for completely jumping ship. If they introduced cars into a Banjo-Kazooie platformer, and then released Nuts and Bolts, it probably would have been much better received. I'm still very hesitant about this, but I'm open to what a vehicle could bring to a platformer like this. It could be a welcome addition as a late-game power-up that makes backtracking to clean up old worlds less painful, and introduce new puzzle mechanics. Instead of sections like in Tooie where Banjo would have to taxi NPCs to the train, what if you could call your car, load them up, and directly escort them to their destination, with the added mobility of a vehicle? Or maybe it can float over a toxic lake or lava you couldn't as easily clear. Or suppose only a car could go fast enough to go through a loop, or fast enough to win a race. If implemented very carefully and deliberately, I think a car could revolutionize platforming games in a very positive way, much like Skell's improved getting around in Xenoblade. I'm also extremely iffy about this, but I fall just slightly toward it would be cool if they implemented a first-party character into some role in the game, depending on the franchise, with obvious choices being Banjo-Kazooie or Mumbo for Microsoft, and Diddy or Donkey Kong for Nintendo. Sony's less obvious, but Spike or Spectre might be good choices. It'd be especially interesting if Company Rare revived Banjo and did a crossover with Yooka Laylee, since Capital B is probably somehow involved in supplying Banjo with honeycombs. One of my favorite things about Banjo-Kazooie, and especially Banjo-Tooie, was the coexistence of fairy tale fantasy and technology. Grunty starts using a brew and divining with her magic pot, but then her plan entails a comically elaborate machine instead of some spell. And on your journey you meet her metallic garbage disposal shark and find her coal boat. The subtle subversion of expectations becomes very apparent in Tooie, where Grunty's sisters travel to her in a digging tank, use magic to free her, and then switch back to using an amusingly named machine to sap the life force. You'd expect them to travel magically, and use a magic spell to sap the life force, or even just switch fully to using technology, but no, they use both. And it turns out Grunty has a factory. This added a great deal to the franchise's charm for me, and even the way magic interacted with the more technological world was endearing. I definitely hope to see more magic and technology given the irony of science putting an end to magical superstitions. Banjo-Kazooie had a pace-killing mechanic in the resetting notes. In Tooie, it made the mistake of not only removing the resetting mechanic, but clumping notes together into nests, reducing their number from 100 to 15 nests of different value. Banjo-Tooie also had much larger worlds, and could have benefited from spreading the collectibles out. It has been criticized for seeming barren in places, and that is because nearly every other collectible was bunched into a nest. The natural leading the player through the main areas of the level was much harder. Instead of a string of eggs or notes drawing your attention to the meat of the level, everything was usually off to the side, and you could stop and collect it if you really wanted to. I have no doubt these worlds will be just as big as Banjo-Tooie, if not slightly bigger. So I'm hoping every consumable collectible and standard stage fare collectible is placed one at a time to lead new players through the levels, and that they don't just reset on death or exit. because, well, you know. Of course I want all of the worlds to somehow connect! That was such a cool idea that really made Banjo-Tooie stand as a true improvement of the first game. Maybe it shouldn't be quite as convoluted, but still, have the worlds tie together. It could be a great, organic way to bypass large portions of the overworld. Maybe you invest a few pages in the right spot of World 1, and it creates a path that connects to another world. So a short detour through World 1 takes you directly to World 5. No need for warp points. Another of Banjo-Tooie's great improvements was the inclusion of warp pads to act as checkpoints and make the large worlds easier to manage. Today, these are a standard of almost any exploration-focused game. It isn't about making you have to do the same platforming challenge over and over, it is about furthering your gameplay experience and filling you with a desire to explore the entire level. I definitely want these in the actual worlds, and if the worlds aren't carefully connected, the overworld. Not that it would be bad to give the choice to detour through the first world or to warp near each world's entrance. The Banjo games are known for their witty dialogue, wacky characters, and sexual innuendos. I don't think I've played a game that includes a living toilet, a blind welding torch, genre-savvy characters, and instances of fourth wall breaking, and last-minute M-rating aversions. Even the enemies are full of the same character with their greetings and death cries. Heck, just having nuts and bolts with eyes coming at you is something you won't soon forget. This is something that set Rare apart from their competition, and it is vital they recapture the same whimsy and humor. I'm sure there is nothing to worry about considering we have a snake in a pair of pants, a minecart named after an embarrassing typo, and a tentacled character called Dr. Puzz. Or maybe I should try to be British and say Doctopuzz. You all got that pun, right? Another improvement Banjo-Tooie made was going from 4 bosses, being liberal with the term boss, to a boss in every world, and these bosses were characters of their own. These fights were some of the most memorable parts of the game, so I definitely want to see at least one boss for every world. Tooie also introduced a new transformation in every world, and in the overworld. Sure, some were the expanded returns of favorites from Banjo-Kazooie, and some were pretty lame and situational. But there's something charming about knowing there will be a goofy form to become in each world. More than anything, I want them to not try to remake Banjo-Kazooie or Tooie with a new skin. I wanted to look at the things each of their games did well and expand upon it, like they are making Banjo 3. Much like Shovel Knight looked back at NES classics and what they did well, but still moved forward to be its own thing and improve upon every flaw those NES games had. We love Banjo and Kazooie, Mumbo, and all the others. Lizard and Bat cannot take their place, but they can take their own place next to Banjo and Kazooie. Playtonic needs to take what made the Banjo games wonderful and bring it into the current gen as its own thing, very separate from, but deeply affectionate to their past works. Okay, I feel like that's a very good ending, so here's some cards. Not gonna show them. Episode question: what are some of your hopes for Yooka Laylee?